Request protocol to escort His Excellency. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Guillermo Lasso Mendoza, Constitutional President of the Republic of Ecuador. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome His Excellency Guillermo Lasso Mendoza, Constitutional President of the Republic of Ecuador, and to invite him to address the Assembly.
Señor
Mr. Dennis Francis, President of the 78th session of the General Assembly. Distinguished delegates and representatives of the nations of the world. We are here to renew our commitment to the ideals and principles that give life to the United Nations. Peace, the diplomatic resolution of conflicts, and respect for freedoms and human rights. In this brief address, I shall share our vision and efforts to address the global challenges that we are facing, including climate change, chronic infant malnutrition, and even the most urgent threats to our security. Since my government took office, we have rolled out an historic policy of environmental transition which preserves our natural heritage. In parallel, we have made great strides in transitioning from unsustainable production systems to a low-emission circular economy. In January 2022, we expanded the protection of the Galapagos Islands with the establishment of the Brotherhood Marine Reserve of 60,000 square kilometers. This decision represents the greatest step forward by my country towards the preservation of our incomparable biodiversity. In addition, we have enhanced the Eastern Tropical Pacific Marine Corridor, acting in common purpose with the kindred nations of Colombia, Costa Rica, and Panama. Together, we have created the largest cross-border reserve in the world in protecting 500,000 square kilometers, home to innumerable and unique species that use these migratory routes. We did this for our peoples and for the world. Above all, my government has been able to balance environmental aspirations with good economic sense. We have been pioneering in implementing an innovative debt for conservation swap initiative. This redirects resources towards the protection of the Galapagos Islands. Without doubt, this is great news for the world. The debt swap amounted to $1.63 billion, making it the largest transaction of its kind in the history of humanity. This figure is equivalent to 10% of Ecuador's public debt with external private creditors. Of this amount, 450 million will be channeled into the Galapagos Life Fund for the protection of marine ecosystems and more than 2,500 species, 38 of which are migratory. In this way, we are showing the world how debt and all of its financial weight can be converted into opportunities of various kinds. Further, we wish to express here our concern at the upcoming and ever more likely El Niño phenomenon, which could cause devastating flooding in Ecuador and the region. To prepare for a potential event on such a scale, we have prioritized prevention. And we are working with the United Nations to seek alternative forms of financing through multilateral organizations. We appeal to the international community to consider risk mitigation measures through the large financial funds and non-reimbursable international cooperation. Because the severity of this event is related to climate change. This is a huge task that requires the collaboration of all sectors of the international community to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and to protect the future of us all. However, we are not only concerned by environmental issues. We are also focusing on improving the quality of life of the most disadvantaged in society, particularly children. Faced with alarming figures of chronic infant malnutrition, we have implemented the successful Ecuador Grows Without Child Malnutrition program. Through this program, in just 28 months, we reduced the rate of malnutrition in infants under the age of 2 by 3.5%, shrinking it from 23.6% to 20.1%. This type of malnutrition has serious and irreversible consequences on the children affected by it. It affects their neurological development, their ability to learn, to communicate, to think, and to relate to others. So these children from the beginning of their lives face enormous disadvantages that have negative repercussions on their future. In light of this painful reality, we have implemented this public policy strategically to provide care to pregnant women and to children in their first 1,000 days of life with medicines and vitamins. We have repurposed and equipped health centers. We've recruited more family medicine specialists, more obstetricians and nurses, and we've further hired 50,000 community workers who go into neighborhoods to detect cases of malnutrition in time. Thanks to this, more than 20,000 children under the age of 2 are now free of chronic malnutrition. And all of this has happened with investment of $650 million over 28 months in government. Solutions don't depend on how much money a state has, but rather how much political will its leaders have. In our government, with a lower average oil price, we've prioritized state resources for this cause. Because there's no growth nor economic development if we do not invest in social issues and in our children. We hope to be able to share our experience with all of you and to join forces so that in the near future we can all together say the world is growing without child malnutrition. President. Ecuador strives to promote safe and responsible migration. We are one of the few countries that experiences all facets of migration. We are a country of origin, of destination, a transit country, and a country of return and even of refuge. Migration in recent years has been a challenge for the region because it has meant facing complex situations posing enormous challenges with cultural, economic, and social impacts. Ecuador has hosted thousands of migrants of different nationalities. In light of this, it was essential to identify their needs, their circumstances, activities, and experiences, and this became a fundamental goal of our innovative approach. It led us to begin a registration process for foreign migrants residing in our country, irrespective of their migratory status. And we have now registered 201,711 citizens. Most of them are Venezuelan citizens who reached Ecuador fleeing hunger and authoritarianism. We want to give them a better future, guaranteeing all of their rights, giving them a humanitarian visa so that they can regularize their stay in our country and find it easier to integrate into society. Our arms have been open wide to protect this population that is asking for refuge from us. With or without documents, children are being enrolled in schools. Everybody is treated in public hospitals. Nonetheless, the open doors policy requires the valuable support of the international community. We have acted coherently and in a spirit of solidarity, and we humbly hope that this will be reciprocated. Ladies and gentlemen, after 31 years, Ecuador has taken up the challenge of returning to the Security Council. We've done this at a critical juncture for humanity, marked by extremely complex phenomena, such as the post-pandemic global vulnerability and an unexpected war which has heightened nuclear tensions. At the same time, new problems related to radicalization and violent extremism are emerging. Ecuador has risen to the challenge. Over the 9 months of our membership of the Security Council, we have acted consistently in accordance with the United Nations Charter. We have prioritized the peaceful resolution of conflicts and the protection of civilians, the Women, Peace and Security agenda, as well as combating illegal arms trafficking. Our action is in response in particular to new threats such as transnational organized crime that undermines democratic stability, civic safety, and the rule of law. I reiterate my statement at the high-level meeting of the Security Council on Ukraine. We call once again for a cessation of the military aggression and compliance with the order of the International Court of Justice, and for progress towards a peace based on the territorial integrity of Ukraine and the Charter of the United Nations. We have warned that this conflict not only inflicts pain and destruction on the people of Ukraine, but also worsens global food insecurity and destabilizes the global economy, particularly in developing countries. For this reason, we insist on the resumption of the Black Sea Grain Initiative. All wars and conflicts must cease. Excellencies, I dedicate the rest of my statement to a topic which is of the utmost concern to Ecuador and the world. I have been called upon to be the head of a state at a momentous time in history, which, like few others, is under violent siege by an enemy whose allies move between the porous borders that still divide the legitimate from the illegal world. I'm referring to transnational organized crime, particularly drugs trafficking, and its dangerous and increasing effects on public life. My government has beaten records in the confiscation of drugs. In just 2 years, we have seized more than 500 tons. This is a figure that far exceeds that seized by previous governments. What we are seeing today is the result of the blow that we have wrought to the income of the criminals. Such is the impact of our policy. Last year, the United Nations recognized Ecuador as the 3rd country in the world in drug seizures, after the United States and Colombia. Just a few weeks ago, Ecuador experienced a hitherto unheard of event: the assassination of a presidential candidate. I'm referring to Fernando Villavicencio, a clear-sighted and brave Ecuadorian who denounced outright the activities of organized crime and its links with political mafias. Transnational organized crime is a corrupt and murderous system which penetrates society and the state, which defies the democratic stability of our countries, and which is progressing at great speed. It's not a problem exclusive to Ecuador. It's a global problem. Indeed, across the world, we see expansion of the same phenomenon as Ecuador is suffering: drugs trafficking, weapons trafficking, people smuggling, forced migration, and illegal mining. If we do not fight together, we will continue to suffer them alone. If the enemy is able to multiply itself, states must also be able to multiply our efforts, even more so. It's vital for the future survival of states that we forge lasting, robust, and effective mechanisms to bring an end to criminal organizations and those who support or sponsor them. Because if we want to fully share in the bounties of a globalized world, we must also face together the very adversities that this brings with it. Excellencies, in this and in each and every battle which we face together, you can always count on Ecuador's unswerving commitment. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the Constitutional President of the Republic of Ecuador for the statement just made, and I request protocol to escort His Excellency. The Assembly will now hear an address by His Excellency João Manuel Gonçalves Lourenço, the President of the Republic of Angola. I request protocol to escort His Excellency.